Okay, we're recording this, so we have to stand over here. Welcome to our 8th React Meetup, New York City. Thank you so much for coming. I think this is probably the biggest one. You've been to a couple. This is probably like one of the biggest ones we've had. 230 people RSVP'd, so very exciting. We're going to do quick, maybe 3 to 5 minutes of announcements and quick introduction. So I'll introduce you to Tom, who runs the ADP Innovation Lab, or is a principal architect at the ADP Innovation Lab, and Taylor, who's doing our talk today. My name's David. I'm the organizer. I work at Citrusbyte, and we're a software consulting firm. We use React in almost all of our projects at this point, which is why we started the group. Quick announcements. Next month will be a Shutterstock. We haven't posted the talk yet. We're still actually organizing speaker schedules, so if you are interested in talking, you're welcome to contact me. I'll put the email address up in just a moment. We selected Shutterstock because, like ADP, they use React in their stack. They're currently going through some re-architecture of their front end, so it'll be interesting to get to meet their team and talk about that with them. Similarly, you're welcome to do the same thing with Tom tonight. They're doing something similar using React at ADP. And if you're a +1 and you're not in the event, you can go to meetup.com and just search NYC JavaScript React, and we'll be the first group that pops up. So you can join there and then join the event next month. So about us, this is our eighth talk. 8 talks, 8 speakers. Now we have 800+ people in the group, so that's amazing. We're less than a year old. We've been getting over 100 people joining per month. If you want to be a speaker, again, you can email me at hello@citrusbyte.com, this email address down here at the bottom. I'll put that up again in just a moment, or just come up to me and talk to me, email me through the group, however you want to get in touch is fine. We're about giving back to the community, so this is our company's way of sort of investing in good software tools and practices to help the community build better software. We like to connect people, so hopefully you got some chance to meet other people in the community before the talk's going to start, but if not, afterwards we do networking as well. If you're, so just out of curiosity, if you haven't used React before, you're just learning about it, and you're just sort of like have like a cursory interest in it, raise your hand for me. Oh wow, okay, usually it's a lot more people. So you're welcome to talk to the people in the room, talk to Tom, Taylor, if you want to learn about why they've gotten behind this library and why they're interested in these tools. And afterwards will be available probably from 8 to 9. Okay, yeah. So you're welcome to hang out, have a drink, and meet the team. There was like an awesome round table that formed last time, and I left at 10, and they were still here drinking and chatting. And we want to, overall, just promote people making products that users love and help them have better lives. That's what software is really all about. Cool. So again, if you want to talk or you're interested in posting, you can email me through the meetup group. You can email me at hello@citrusbyte.com. The talk today is by Taylor. It's about tools that you can use to supplement building React applications. So he'll give you an overview of each of the tools. And if you have additional questions, he'll give you time for questions at the end. And you can also he'll be hanging out, so you can come up and ask him about his experience and get more details that way. Tom's going to do a quick introduction to the ADP Innovation Lab and make some announcements, and then we'll start with the talk. Cool.
All right, hi everyone. Thanks for coming, welcome. This is the ADP Innovation Lab. I'm a principal architect here. I'm responsible for a few teams. One of them is building a new UI engine for the platform that we're building, and we're using React heavily. So really interested and supporters of the technology and the community, which is why we love having these events here. So just to give a very brief intro about the lab and ADP. So ADP, many of you may have come across ADP before in terms of payroll. ADP provides a number of solutions across the full range of human capital management, all the way from recruitment to retirement. And so what we're doing here in the lab is creating the next generation of their products on what we know today, but then also incorporating new things like big data, social, mobile, artificial intelligence, and others. You can see here just some general numbers about ADP. We've got about 500,000 clients in the cloud. We've got over 600,000 worldwide. We've got tens of millions of users, many millions of logins per day. About 20,000 logins per second is the kind of scale we're dealing with in 130 countries around the world. So for us here and for technologists that are passionate about building things and solving challenging problems, these are the kinds of things that we enjoy doing here. And just to give you a sense of some of the different technologies that we're working with here in the lab, here's a bit of an overview, give you a sense. And yeah, finally we're hiring. So we've been here since September 2013. We have this floor on the 4th. We've scaled to about 100 people since then, and we're hiring another 100 to 150. We've got approval for the 2nd and 3rd floor, so we'll actually have this whole building. So, you know, really, if people are interested in talking about opportunities to work here, and we have Tony from our recruiting team, who's just at the back, if he can stand up. Yeah, feel free to chat to him. You know, but we're big supporters of the community. That's part of the reason why we built out this space, to be able to bring in, you know, everyone and give back. You know, we're big supporters of open source, and we want to, you know, do more contributing to open source too. So, you know, if you just want to talk about these things as well, you know, please connect. Thanks. I'll hand it over to Taylor.
So I'm going to show you some of the tools that I found through my React.js development. I've been using React for about 1.5 years now, and I've come across a lot of great tools that make your development a lot easier. And this is about kind of the tools that help me, but I want you guys to think about what tools can help your development. Everybody's development environment is different, and it's good to think about each tool that you use and how it can help you build better apps. So think about how your workflow can improve. Maybe there's some open source tools that you can use. Also, maybe think about building a new tool, because people's development isn't that unique. If you run into that problem, probably somebody else has run into that problem as well. So I'm going to show off a few tools here. I can't take credit for building any of them, but I'm just using them. Hopefully, it'll pique your interest and you'll go investigate them yourself. I'm going to show kind of a high level of each app or each tool, and then kind of go through how they work. So one of the things that I've run into a lot of times in my React.js development is how long it takes to see changes in my app. So if you've noticed, when you're building your apps, you might use JSX. So here's what an app might look like in JSX. I have like a simple Hello World app here. But with JSX, you've actually added a transpilation step. So essentially what happens is you might be using a specific tool to create this. Normally it's Babel.js. And it transforms this information into the function basically on the right there. Sorry. I'm going to take this off. So this can actually add some time to your build step. And as you add more and more components, this build can actually take longer and longer. And you can see that I'm actually using a require statement up there. That's a common JS syntax. And basically I have to bundle all my components together at some point. So that can actually take a lot of time. So this is kind of the thing that I'm trying to avoid. This is from XKCD. I'm sitting around waiting for my thing to compile. And although that sword fighting actually looks pretty fun, I wish I could do that. It's wasted time where you actually want to be working on your app, but you're sitting around waiting for the compiler to work. So when you're building an app, before the tools I'm going to show you, this is kind of how your workflow would go. You update your code, you make a change to your app, maybe correctly. Sometimes people make errors, that happens. You're going to rebuild your app manually, or maybe through an automated process. You're going to refresh the browser, you're going to navigate to wherever you want to see the change, and then you're going to verify those changes in some way. So that process isn't too bad on like a very simple app, but it can add up over time. So this is where Webpack and React Hot Loader come into play. So let me give an example of a simple app using the old method. I'm going to go to a demo here. So I created a really simple app here. Basically, I open up a modal. I added some tabs here just to show that there's going to be a couple of states to get to where I want to change. I have to go to tab 2, and that's where my hello world is that I want to change. So since we're at the React meetup group, I probably want to change that to hello React group. So I'm going to go over to my JavaScript here. I'm going to make a change here. I'm going to save it. Now I have to go back and check to make sure it's building. Oh, looks like it's building correctly. I have to go back, refresh the page. Now I have to do that part about navigating back to state. Look back, and now my code has been changed. So that wasn't too bad on this simple app, but as you get a much more complicated app, and you have a few more steps that you have to get to the state that you want to check, that can actually be a big drain on your development. And it can slow down your development significantly. Those few seconds add up pretty quickly, especially if I'm changing this specific component a bunch. So here's where React Hot Loader and Webpack come in. So Webpack is a module bundler. It combines all of these little require statements at the top of my app here. It combines all those, it gets the dependencies, combines all of the files together, and bundles them up into a single file. And one of the nice things about it is it has a check to see on the server to see whether a file has changed, and it will only update what has changed. So it actually can improve your development speed just because of that. And then React Hot Loader is a bundler, or is a plugin for that, for Webpack. That essentially listens to those changes, and then will update your React app to the spot that it needed to change. So let's look at the demo again with React Hot Loader. So I got my sample app 2 here. I'm going to navigate to my other code. Saved it here. So I'm going to open up the modal again. Probably don't need the dev tools right now. I'm going to go to the dev thing, and then I'm going to change this again to React group. So as you can see, it changed right in that spot. I didn't actually have to refresh the page. I didn't have to navigate back through the modals, and that was a big win. I only wanted to make a simple text change, and I basically gained a few seconds on my development time there. And you can actually do more complicated things. I can actually add components inside of here. So now I added a button. I can change specific properties on that button. I can change this. So now I can change it to blue. So this is a big win, and this comes to you via Webpack and React Hot Loader. So it's not just limited to the JavaScript changes. You can actually make CSS changes. If you're using inline styles in your React components, it actually can update the styles as well. But in this case, I'm using actual general CSS. So you can see up here, I'm actually including Bootstrap. And then I actually have an app CSS there. So if I wanted to make a change to my app CSS, maybe I want to change the modal background to red. I don't know why I want to do that, but I do. So I can change my CSS as well. So this is like a huge win, and I can actually spend time figuring out what I want to do with my app instead of figuring out how long it's going to take me to develop or to compile this code. So that's Webpack with React.loader. Let me go back to the slides. So the next tool I wanted to show you was Babel.js. So how many of you guys are using Babel.js right now? Okay, almost everybody, or at least 50%. So this is not going to be a lot of news to most of you. So if you're actually using React right now and you have this compile step of changing your JSX into the function form, you're probably using Babel.js already. And so one of the nice things about Babel.js, it's basically a compiler or a transpiler that changes one type of code into another. It comes built in with a lot of ES6 transformations. So you can change your ES6, you can use ES6 code now, and it will transform it to ES5. That's supported in almost every browser. So out of the box, Babel comes with a ton of transformations. These are all ES6 features. It has more than this. I didn't actually list some of the ES7 features that it actually has. I'm actually not a fan of using those features that aren't standardized yet. But there's a big list here. But I wanted to narrow down to just a few of them that I use all the time in my React components. These ones aren't too much actual code changes. It's very simple modifications that actually make writing React components a lot easier. So in this case, I'm using ES6 modules. Here's the standard module I had before with require. I can actually use an import statement. And this is an ES6 import. And what this gains you is that eventually browsers will support modules. And you won't need to compile all your files into one big giant file eventually. And then I'm actually using, you can see these little brackets with prop types inside of it. I'm actually using one of the named exports from this module, and I'm pulling out the prop types. So it's similar to if I was to say prop types is equal to react.proptypes. So I can actually do a little shorthand of accessing that code. So what does that gain me? So I'm a big fan of the prop types in React components. What prop types do is basically tells the types of every prop that comes down through your component. It's great for documentation, but it also helps you find bugs pretty quickly in your components. So here I have a couple of structures that I'm creating to show what kind of data I want to come through this component. But I also have a lot of keep writing react.proptypes a bunch of times. So since I pulled off the prop types, I can actually remove the React part. And it's still not spectacular. I mean, I still have to write prop types a bunch of times. But it's still slightly shorter. So the next one I'm going to talk about is the ES6 function shorthand. So this is what a React component might look like in ES5. You have a bunch of methods, and then I have basically the same name written twice there. That's for debugging purposes. If you don't write the actual function name, it will show an honest function as an error. So I don't like to do that, so I actually wrote the function name. But it's very cumbersome to keep writing that same word each time. So in ES6, you can actually cut out a lot of the cruft there. You can remove the second name. You can also remove the function keyword, and it's much shorter. And this comes to you with the Babel. It will basically transpile that thing on the right to the code on the left, which is really nice. Another one is ES6 destructuring. So in this case, I am showing a simple view, and I basically have to rewrite this.props a bunch of times. So for instance, if I had the text property, if I wanted to use that multiple times, I keep writing this.props.text1. That's kind of annoying. If you're familiar, you could probably write var text1 is equal to this .props.text1 and create a local variable. But ES6 actually makes that really easy for you. You can basically pull the properties off of an object. So at the top there, where I'm looking at the top, I'm basically pulling the properties off of this .props, and then I'm using them below. So essentially, if I was to be reusing text1 or text2 multiple times, this would save a lot of writing. So the last one I'm going to show you is arrow functions. So if you've ever written a set state call inside of a callback, you've noticed that you probably lose this, which is kind of annoying. So the way to do that is you save the this. In this case, I like the variable me. That's very up for debate. So I'm calling it inside of an interval. I have to call set state, but I am using the me variable inside of there, and that's kind of annoying, especially if I was in multiple functions and I had to do this. I don't like having to save the this variable all over the place. So arrow functions give you a nice thing where you basically change the function keyword to that little arrow syntax on the right, where let me highlight it over there, to this. And the this context doesn't actually change inside of these arrow functions. So you can actually just use this.setState like normal because the this context hasn't changed. In the right or in the left part, the this would have been in the window, so you would actually broken your app. So the next tool I'm going to show you is ESLint. So how many people use any type of linting tool? All right, that's very great to hear. So if you're not using the a linting tool, I definitely recommend it. There are two major ones out there, JSHint and ESLint. I'm going to talk about ESLint. The reason I like ESLint specifically is it's very pluggable, and it's like out of the box supports React very well. And obviously shows that I'm going to show you one of the plugins for it that supports React. So if you haven't used a linting tool before, it essentially statically analyzes your code and tries to find common bugs that you normally would have in your app. So for instance, undeclared variables, properties that might be undefined, and a bunch of other things that are common errors that you might find in production, or you might find it before you even run into that bug yourself. So let me show you how that works. So I like to actually use I actually didn't mention it before, but I like to use WebStorm as my editor. That's probably very controversial, but sure, there's a Vim people out there. But the thing I would like to mention is having these static analyzers built into your editor is like incredibly powerful. I think there are plugins for every editor, even if you like Vim or if you like Sublime or whatever you like, there are plugins for it. And what this allows you to do is find common errors very quickly. Instead of having a console open in another window that you're constantly checking to see if you have errors, like you can see errors in line. So in my React apps, I make a lot of errors. So I like to see them as quick as possible. So one of the things I always tend to do is I always put class instead of class name. I'm frustrated by that they chose class name, but I sometimes will be copying code from another place, and I forget to change class to class name, and I might not realize it till I look in the app and I can't figure out why some style is not being applied. But as you can see here, I actually have this little squiggly line underneath my editor here, and it's telling me that I have an unknown property class found. It says use class name instead, which that gives me an error right away. And I don't even have to wait for the browser to load, even look over to the left of my screen to see that's wrong. I know right away that I've made a mistake. So out of the box, ESLint, the plugin for React, that's actually specifically for the React plugin, comes with a lot of different rules. So for instance, if I forget to put React at the top, which sometimes I tend to do because I'm not necessarily using the React object itself, if you look down here inside of the view, it's actually starting to put red lines underneath these JSX, and it's telling me, hey, React's not in scope here. This is not going to work. So I can easily know that I made a mistake and remedy that very quickly without having to worry about looking at what build failed. So the last rule I'm going to show you, I'm going to actually show you the list first. So it comes with a ton of rules. Let me actually open that a little bit wider. So it comes with a ton of rules. Some of them are style-based ones about like where you put your brackets and whether you use a few other things. But there's some great ones in there that'll help you find a lot of bugs in your applications. So one of the ones I use a lot is the prop type one. And what that does is if you use a prop type, like for instance this, hold on a sec. So I'm deciding I'm going to use the, if you look over on the right, sorry, let me actually make it bigger. So on the right here, it's actually not complaining. Hold on a sec. I forgot I did that. So I added this.props.title, but since I put a rule in there to say that everything that I use in my view has to be declared in my prop types, it's complaining here. So essentially it's saying, hey, title, if I highlight under the word, if I can get that, it's telling me, hey, title is missing from the prop types validation. So that's like a cool thing. It's basically telling me I need to go up to the prop types and declare what that is. You guys get the idea. I have to put React.PropTypes. I'm slow at typing with the. So the last tool I wanted to go over today was React developer tools. This is actually a very timely talk because React, the Facebook team just actually released a new version of the React developer tools yesterday. So I actually get to show you the new version. I'm going to ignore the last version of it. So if you've used React before, I'm actually going to open up the presentation real quick. Actually, let's open up the demo. It'll probably be easier. So I have a React app working here. You've probably seen this weird line that pops up in your console, and you're probably saying, hey, React, don't tell me what to do. So I ignored it for a long time. I said, I don't think it knows what it's talking about. I don't like that thing. But eventually I decided to try it out because I basically just didn't want to see that in my console. So let me enable it really quickly. So let me refresh. So in your development tools, this is specifically in Chrome. I think they're eventually going to come out with a Firefox version and maybe even a standalone version. But it gives you this new tab called React. And it says connecting to React. And you actually get to see your component. I'm going to move this over here a little bit. Maybe make this bigger. Hold on a sec. Oops, too big. So I actually can see my app there. You can actually see the component, the React component that's making this happen. And then as I open it up, I actually can see the individual components inside of there, which is pretty awesome. And then I can actually look at the props on each button and each component. So this is similar to like if you were going to pause your app in one of the views and check what props, but it kind of gives it to you right away. And you can modify the props here. So for instance, if I was going to change, I don't know, the button to disabled, now I can't click it anymore. So it's like an easy way to debug your apps, but it's also an easy way to develop as well. If you want to just try a new value and you don't want to make a big code change, it's kind of an easy way to do that. So there's a couple other things in here. You can search by your components. So for instance, let me actually just make that false. You know, if I have my modal open and I want to see where the modal is, It allows me to search for that component. I can look at it, check the props to make sure they're correct. Seems like they are to me. And then you can actually right-click and either scroll to the node inside of the HTML, or you can actually go to the source. I actually like going to the source sometimes just to check what's going on. So that will open up the file that that component exists in. And then I can either put a breakpoint there, or I can check some issue that's going on. So that's about it for me. Those are the tools I wanted to show you guys. I want to leave you with a note of trying to think about what tools can help your development environment. Hopefully some of these tools you guys can use to make your development a lot better. But also think about what other tools are out there in the ecosystem that you could create or you could use to make your apps a lot better. And basically spend more time developing instead of working on the compile step. Thanks. Yeah, so I'll open up for questions. Go ahead.
One of your Webpacks, like slides had a really cool thing. I hadn't seen it about it. And it was like I think it was a kind of structure and showed like columns that kind of let you set scenarios. I was wondering why you use columns. Was there a reason for the columns, or is it kind of columns that work there?
So the question was about why, we'll actually go back to the slide, or actually the code that let me scroll back to it. That wasn't it, there it is. Yeah, there it was, sorry. So this slide about why you use const in that circumstance. So let is another ES5 or ES6 keyword, and so var is obviously available in all JavaScript. I'm a big fan of using const as much as possible. The reason being is that if you're in maybe a long function and I want to figure out what the value, like for instance, I don't know, of text1 is, I know that it's going to be that property on this.props, because if someone later on tries to change what text1 is equal to, it will throw an error. The browsers will support that eventually, and it'll throw an error at runtime, but Babel will actually give you an error if you try to use that same property again. So, I mean, it doesn't work in all circumstances. Maybe if you have to determine the value of a variable inside of like an if-else statement, you can't use really a const in that circumstance. But in this case, it works pretty well. Go ahead.
So with the React hot loader, do you have to have your state? Basically, do you have to use Flux to use React hot loader?
So, to get some of the features out of React hot loader, you would need to have your state be in like some type of Flux architecture. If you've seen some of the talks on React hot loader, he mentions Redux, which is his framework that basically has like a single state. But you don't necessarily have to have a Flux architecture to use React hot loader. You might not get all the features out of it, as in like you might not be able to transform your models and see and change inside of the view. But in this case, I'm not using Flux, I'm using straight React on those like modals, right? And I was still able to use it. I might not use it to its best of its ability, but I still get a lot of use out of it.
What other libraries or plugins have you used for React that you recommend?
I'm probably going to have to come back to you on that. I can't think of the main ones off the top of my head, but I use a few. I mean, these are the main ones that I use. That's the reason I gave a talk on it. But I can actually, if that's something interesting to you, I can come up with a larger list of the ones that I use.
I can answer that. I don't know if anyone's you also React. It's a massive list. I don't know if I've seen that one. It's pretty cool. That ton of stuff. Here we use a bunch of different things. We use so many FPS stats is a cool little thing that you drop on a page and it shows how many frames per second you're getting, you're rendering. There's a few, yeah, if you have video. Yeah, sure. I can go in and drop in the comments and does that sound okay? Yeah. I'll just do it right now. Anyone?
I just wanted to say something about the hot loader that maybe save a bunch of people a lot of time. Is that for normal JavaScript, like when we use the hot loader, we have to inject some scripts from Webpack, like the Webpack dev server /client Webpack /hot dev server hot only dev server. There's also a package inside Webpack, and this is very fine called it's just Webpack /hot /dev server, and that will refresh just for your JavaScript files. So if you're doing a project that's like a mix of React and some other JavaScript, then because sometimes things can get a little dicey when you're using the hot loader with like other files that may aren't JSX.
Perfect. That's good. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I just went into like a very, very high level on all these. Like I'm hoping that you guys will, if you're interested in any of these tools, that you'll investigate it yourself. There's great tutorials online, and I don't want to recreate any of those. And obviously, your advice was great.
How do you guys React? How do you unit test React?
Say it again, sorry.
How do you unit test React?
Oh, how do I unit test React? So there's basically all the React testing tools, or all the JavaScript testing tools work with React. So for instance, Mocha, if you like to use Mocha, or Jasmine, those ones work. I actually use, specifically for myself, I use Mocha, and I use a JS DOM, which is like allows you to basically render stuff in Node, just because it's a lot faster. And then obviously there's some tools that are built in the add-ons of React that allow you to specifically test parts of your component. But yeah, specifically I use Mocha and I use JS DOM, and there's a plugin for React for JS DOM as well.
For what it's worth, if anyone's interested, for our unit testing, we use Kullman as a test runner, our tester in Jasmine. That's kind of cool for us because it means we can test across different browser DOMs.
Have you used any React Universal JS and Supercharge with React Router?
Sorry, you said React Router?
Yeah.
So yeah, I've used React Router. I use specifically the Redux framework with Flux, and then there's good plugins for using React Router with that library. Are you said Universal JS?
Yeah, it's
yeah, so I haven't actually worked too much with isomorphic. The company I work for, we're eventually actually going to migrate to something like that, but I don't have a lot of first-hand experience with that.
Did you use JavaScript testing, and what did you think about it?
So I've given Jest a bunch of tries, and the overhead, like I kept having problems with trying to get it to run. I'm not sure if it was my environment or just I was stupid about it, but I had a really hard time getting it working. I don't know if that's changed. I haven't tried it in a few months. But no, I don't use it, and I haven't been able to use it because I always ran into, I can't remember specifically the issues, but I did run into issues.
Did you use Node with it?
Did I use what?
Node?
Yeah.
It doesn't work with 10, with higher than 10, 0.10.
Okay. And that might have been the issue. I don't know.
What are the pros and cons of Webpack versus
Oh, those are like fighting words right there. At least for my development, I was a big Browserify user up until the last few months. I've used Browserify for everything. Basically, in most situations, they're pretty much interchangeable. Like, you can use Browserify almost any time. You can use Webpack. Well, Webpack obviously comes with a lot of, batteries included. It has a lot of the things that you'll want to use already built in. And then the reason why I switched was because of React Hot Loader. It's built into it. I I've heard something that they're trying to create one for Browserify, or they might have one, but I've been on using Webpack for a long time because of React Hot Loader and its support for that. It depends upon the app that I'm writing. At my company, we use Gulp because kind of our legacy kind of code doing that. But yeah, I mean, in a lot of circumstances, for pretty simple apps, you can just get away with Webpack. And I just generally use the minimal amount that I'll need. So if I need to do something that will be much easier in Gulp, then I will tend to use Gulp. But if it's just like a straight transformation, then Webpack is just fine by itself. All right, thank you.